I lived in the mortuary, yes, but not in the embalming room. I mean, they make it sound like, I slept in the crypts with him. And I never climbed into a coffin or anything like that. That is so damn ridiculous. And besides, the dead won't bother you. It's the living you got to worry about.
When I think they know, and they know that I didn't do these things. You are not guilty. I'm not guilty. Does that include the time I stole comic books when I was 5 years old?
We are all evil in some form or another.
I've been wanting to make this video for a long while now. As some of you may know, I'm pretty fascinated by unsolved mysteries and serial murder cases and things of the sort. I don't know why I've been hesitant about making this one, but I have been, and recently there is some new info to the case, which sort of pushed me into doing this video now. This is the case of the Long Island serial killer, also known as the Gilgo Beach murders. The thing about this case that makes it so fascinating, besides the fact that it's still unsolved, is the story of what led up to them finding out about the murders in the first place. If you really want to talk about the Gilgo Beach murders, you have to start with Shannon Gilbert. Shannon Gilbert was a prostitute from New York City who sold her services on Craigslist. She was a Craigslist hooker. On May 1st, she gets a call from a John who lives in Oak Beach, Long Island, which is a small little area, gated community, very close to the Gilgo Beach area. So what happens is, Shannon gets a ride from her driver. She has a driver and a pimp, everything. The driver takes her to the John's house in Oak Beach. There, she's inside for a while. I forget the exact amount of time. At one point in the night, she calls the police from the John's house or her cell phone. I don't remember exactly. But she calls the police all frantic, claiming that people are trying to kill her. The guy's there trying to hurt her. She doesn't know what to do. She's freaking out, right? A while later, she leaves the house. It's about 5 in the morning, and this old man is shaving in his bathroom. And he hears this loud pounding noise from his door. So he goes down to see what it is, and it's Shannon Gilbert, this young woman, ranting and raving that people are trying to kill her. I think she was barefoot at the time, but she had all her clothes on besides that. The old man lets her in, tries to calm her down, tells her to wait here. He's gonna call the cops. She hears this, and she freaks out, and she leaves the house as he calls the cops. He turns around, she's gone. He goes outside, he looks around, he sees she's hiding under a boat, talking to herself. And he goes outside, she runs away. He goes out to the street and sees a sport utility vehicle driving towards him. He flags it down. The guy says, "Did you see a girl around here?" He said, "Yeah, I saw her. She was just at my house. I called the cops." And he was like, "You shouldn't have done that," and drives away, going in the direction that she went. The cops finally get there. They search around the area for a while. They can't find her. They can't find the driver. They go to the John's house. They get the story. They get in touch with the driver the next day, and they talk to him. Now, apparently, according to the police, their story checks out. She was acting crazy. They don't know, maybe she was on drugs or something, but none of them knew of her taking any drugs. That's the weird thing. So the John and the driver basically have the same story of her, being out of control. And she got away from them at some point. They didn't realize, so then they went looking for her. Not the John, the driver. So according to the police, the John and the driver had no wrongdoing. Now, they still haven't found the body. 6 months later, 7 months later, December, they have a search dog looking for Shannon Gilbert still. And they're searching the area a little farther down towards the west, towards Gilgo Beach. And the canine finds a body. They get down there, they recover the body, they take it back. They're supposed to go back the next day, which is Sunday, I believe. And it snowed, weather was real bad, so they couldn't go back until Monday. Before they go back on Monday, the body was autopsied, and what happens? They identify that the body is not Shannon Gilbert's. How did they know this? Because Shannon Gilbert had a metal plate in her jaw. So right there, a whole wrench is thrown in this whole case. Detectives are like, we're looking for this missing girl who probably died out here, and now we find a body. So they go back Monday to recover more forensic evidence, knowing that the body is not Shannon Gilbert's, and they find 3 more bodies. They identify all 3 bodies through DNA, and what do they find out? All 4 of them are Craigslist sex workers. 3 from New York City, 1 from Babylon, Long Island. Some of these bodies actually were people who went missing after Shannon Gilbert. So obviously, as you can see, this is a very bizarre case. You have basically the same situation, it seems. They're all Craigslist sex workers from New York City, and all their bodies are found in this area. And it's right near the place where Shannon Gilbert went missing, and she was a Craigslist prostitute. So people right away thought the cases were connected. There's a lot of conspiracy theories going on out there. People think that John is the killer. People think this other guy from the neighborhood is the killer because he claimed to have seen Shannon, but apparently he's just a whack job, one of those busybody, nosy people who like to get into everything that goes on in the little neighborhood, makes up things, talks a lot. But the police have thoroughly investigated the John, the driver, this guy who's in the neighborhood who's wacky, and they've definitely ruled them out. They are positive they have nothing to do with this murder. So it's all a great coincidence and just a weird twist of fate. And I think that's why I find this case so interesting. I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, but over time 6 more bodies were recovered, so that made 10 altogether. And then a year after Shannon went missing, she was found. All of the 10 bodies that were found were wrapped in the same manner, and there are things linking them to each other. But there's nothing linking Shannon's body to the killer. She was not wrapped, she was found in her underwear face down in the mud and the briar. So they could tell by the manner in which the body was found that she wasn't connected to those cases. So real quick before I get to the new info, I just want to describe the area a little bit. It's this long strip of like highway road. It's a 2-way street, maybe a 4-lane highway, I forget exactly. But it's this long strip right next to the beach. But before the beach, there's all this tree, bush, brambly, thickety brush. If you know what that's like. Actually, you could just look at the screen. I'll show it here, what it looks like over there. So it's very hard to navigate while you're walking and running around. So Shannon was barefoot running through that stuff. It's very easy, especially if she was on drugs, to get disoriented and get caught in something, fall, slip, cut herself, things like that. So basically, it's a very rough terrain area, and the killer would have to pull over to the side of the highway. There's like a grass shoulder on the side of the highway, cross that with the body, and then go into the bramble a bit and toss the body in. So this guy took a decent risk by doing that, and Shannon's body was found a lot closer to the site where she was and not as close to the other bodies. So they definitely have ruled out a murder in her case. But conspiracy theorists would have you think another way. So if you go look at any documentaries on this, you're going to see a lot of stupidness and a lot of speculation on the part of these people. But there is a good series that I found on YouTube that is specifically from the detective that took care of the case, Detective Dormer. And I think it's about 9 interviews with him. And he gives you all the facts of the case that he can. And he completely eliminates the John and the driver as the murderer or any of those people out there. And it all just was a weird coincidence. So you can watch those if you want actual good info on the case. Alright, let's get into it. Long Island carpenter could be Gilgo Beach serial killer, tied to Craigslist murders prosecutor. It's a bombshell that came after the sentencing of Long Island carpenter John Bittrolff for the cold case murders of 2 sex workers in the early 1990s. Robert Biancavilla, a prosecutor with the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, said Bittrolff had likely killed other women. When asked by Associated Press about Bittrolff's potential connection to the 2010 Gilgo Beach serial killer case, which involves 10 other victims, Biancavilla responded, "There are remains of the victims at Gilgo that may be attributed to the handiwork of Mr. Bittrolff, and the investigation is continuing." That statement is the opposite of what Suffolk County District Attorney Thomas Spoda told Pix11 News at July 2014 press conference after Bitroff, a husband and father of two, was arrested for the cold case murders 20 years after the first bodies were discovered near Manorville, where Bitroff lived in a large home. Back then, during a press conference, Spoda said there is no evidentiary or investigative link between this case and Gilgo. Pix11 wasn't totally convinced. The first victims tied to Bitroff were 31-year-old Rita Tangretti, who was discovered beaten and strangled in November 1993, and 20-year-old Colleen McNamee, who was found in January 1994 under similar circumstances. Both women had been positioned in a certain way, Spoda said in 2014. The district attorney also released the photo of a third suspect victim, Sandra Castillo, also a sex worker, who was found dead in December 2013. 3 victims in 3 months. The women were found in Manorville, Patchogue area. Bitroff had built and lived in a large home in Manorville with his wife and 2 children. Bitroff was arrested more than 20 years after these initial victims were found, thanks to the power of DNA. It turned out Bitroff's brother, Timothy, has been sent to state prison for contempt of court. He was required by law to give a DNA sample. That's when a hit came up on a state database, tying a male relative of Timothy Bitroff to the cold case murders. Suffolk County Police followed the lead and arrested John Bitroff for the Tangretti and McNamee murders. Pix11 was struck by evidence tied to the Gilgo Beach cases and how it could possibly relate to John Bitroff. In 2000, the torso of an unknown female murder victim was discovered in Manorville, the same place where Bitroff lived. In 2011, during the early months of the Gilgo Beach investigation, detectives found the head, hands, and legs of the unidentified woman whose torso had turned up in Manorville 11 years before. That was something that was very odd about the case. The first people they found in the case were people that had went missing after Shannon Gilbert in 2010. 4 of the other victims that they found, a couple of them were connected to those people in Manorville from the 1990s. Had they been there the whole time since the 1990s in Gilgo Beach, or were they dumped there later on? I really don't know. The cops have never divulged that info. In 2003, the torso of another young sex worker, Jessica Taylor, was found by a jogger in Manorville. The only reason Taylor was identified, a police investigator from Washington, D.C., had called New York police and told them Taylor had a specific tattoo on her torso. Suffolk County detectives discovered the unknown killer had tried to scrape off the tattoo from Taylor's body. Then in 2011, Taylor's skull and hands were found in Oak Beach, adjacent to Gilgo Beach. In July 2014, after Bitroff's arrest, Pix11 interviewed retired NYPD homicide commander and author Vernon Gerberth. Gerberth had written a book about sex crimes and serial killers. Regarding Bitroff's Manorville victims and the Gilgo women, Gerberth reported, "I say those bodies, the heads and the hands, are linked to one killer." Right after I reported this story, a viewer wrote to my Mary Murphy Mystery Facebook page, telling me the grown daughter of Bitroff's victim, Rita Tangretti, was best friends with Gilgo victim, Melissa Barthelemy. The 2 young women knew each other from Buffalo in upstate New York. I thought this connection was significant. In late 2015, there was a shakeup of the top leadership in the Suffolk County Police Department when the chief of department, James Burke, was arrested assaulting a burglary suspect. The suspect said he had found sex toys and porno tapes in Burke's official police vehicle. Much was written about Burke's efforts to keep the FBI out of the Gilgo Beach investigation. When Suffolk County appointed a new police commissioner, Timothy Sinney, the FBI was brought into the Long Island serial killer case known as LISK. Assistant District Attorney Robert Biancavilla made the revelation about Bitroff's potential ties to Gilgo Beach after Bitroff was sentenced to 50 years to life, Tuesday, for the Tangretti-McNamee murders. Biancavilla said that Bitroff had likely killed other women and that some aspects of the bodies found in Gilgo Beach were similar to what he's done before. The Gilgo Beach investigation has just been turned on its head. Yes, it certainly has. Now, we don't know if those connections are true or not, but they're assuming that's what it is, that those bodies tied to the hands have something to do with Bitroff, since he lived in Manorville and his victims were found there also. Alright, so that's about it, and I really hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. And this is one of those cases that I really hope they figure out sooner than later, before I die, hopefully. So, after it's all said and and done, we can get a full, complete story on it. And I can't wait to see one of those documentaries. Anyway, guys, have a good night. Stay safe out there.
You know you are. Bring it down, you're fucking crazy.
They had the intercom on in the room, and they kept lying that it wasn't on, and they were using sonic pressure on my head since 1997.